It was nearly midnight when Vladimir Sigov heard noise in the street outside of his house. Suddenly there came a pounding at his door. Then they crashed in. 15 young men, drunk, wielding axes and clubs, charged through the door. Vladimir and his family had begun working in Gorodok, Belarus as part of a massive church planting project a couple of months before, and they'd just begun an evangelistic series. Vladimir was calm as he met the mob, and he asked why they were visiting him. "You are sectarians. Why are you trying to involve us in your faith?" they responded, followed by a stream of rudeness and threats. One of the young men raised his axe and started for a window of the small house church purchased not very long before. But Vladimir simply asked the man not to do it, and he stopped. Vladimir's wife heard the commotion and came to the door. She also asked the crowd to calm down. But they shouted, "Clear out now! We don't want your sect in our city!" She responded that they forced no one to listen, but her answer didn't satisfy them. She slipped back inside to call the police. She could not reach the police, so she dropped to her knees in prayer, asking God to intervene. As his wife prayed, Vladimir continued to talk with the group, and finally invited them to come back for tea the next day. They said they would indeed return, and at 7 in the evening, 9 people showed up at their door. Vladimir invited them into his home and showed them a video, and afterward he began to tell them of his experience in coming to God. Over tea, they talked late into the night. When the group finally left, some accepted the literature that Vladimir offered and even promised to attend the evangelistic program. All of them apologized for their behavior the night before.
That's a day in the life of a global mission pioneer who is planting churches in the former Soviet Union. You know, it wasn't so long ago that everyone in this area of the world, like Vladimir, were afraid of that knock on the door. Those were the times when we secretly hand-typed devotional books and other literature that was banned under communism. When that knock on the door came, it often meant prison or exile for the people inside. In some places, these fears are still very real today. There are many who would like to stop the spread of religion, and some people who would stop any other religion except their own. And yet, like Vladimir, our global mission pioneers press on. Who are these dedicated young people? Jeff Scoggins is working with them, and he will tell you a little about the group Vladimir belongs to.
Adventists in the former Soviet Union asked 300 young people, volunteers, to become full-time church planters in their home countries. And just days before they were to come to Zalksky Seminary to begin their training, many of them left in a fashion reminiscent of Jesus asking his disciples. They dropped everything and followed. This wasn't a short-term mission call. This was for life. These young people were training to become full-fledged pastors in the congregations they began. Now, these weren't to be typical congregations. These were going to be small group-driven congregations. Not a group of people supporting the ministry of one pastor, but one pastor supporting the ministry of many people. And this model has been started in 300 areas of the former Soviet Union. This is Global Mission's one and only focus: reaching unreached people in areas where they have not yet accepted the good news of Jesus Christ.
Today, across the former Soviet Union, global mission pioneers are reaching out to people in their communities. But why should people respond? Why should they care? What makes Christianity relevant to them? Think about how Jesus worked. He met people where they were and with something they needed. That's the kind of church our global mission pioneers are trying to build in their communities. They are striving to build groups that exhibit the characteristics of the New Testament church, not by just a few paid ministers, but by every single member working to bring Jesus to the people immediately around them. That is what makes Christianity relevant to people.
Think about this. There are 250 million people in the former Soviet Union. You might ask, what can 300 do for so many? Well, Jesus started with just 12, and look what happened. These global mission pioneers, they have a plan. They're each going to start small groups, and those small groups have one focus, one goal, to bring at least one person to Christ every 6 months. Adventists in South America have used this simple model for several years. Today, they're one of the fastest growing territories in the world.
The poor economic situation since the fall of communism is no secret. For these pioneers, this fact has actually been something of a blessing. Property prices have fallen extremely low, and buying small buildings for new congregations has been a realistic goal for Seventh-day Adventists. These buildings aren't huge monuments to architectural genius. They are humble houses which are converted into church and pastors' quarters. But it has been documented that the fastest growing churches are those with 80 to 250 members. Beyond that size, church growth often slows to a crawl. So in this case, small size could be an advantage.
The church in the former Soviet Union is growing rapidly, and that's good news. But when we form a new group of believers, they need a place to meet. In some countries, especially in the 1040 window, where our challenge is the greatest, these believers aren't even allowed to legally exist unless they own their own building. We still fear the possibility, in some countries, like it already has happened in Turkmenistan, that they could be closed to religion and our work. This is where you can help. Global Mission is helping to buy houses for these pioneers and these congregations to be used as churches. And this is possible because of people like you and your generosity. Once we buy one of these houses for the congregation, they themselves take their own time and their own money to convert this house into a church. I hope you will consider helping purchase these house churches for these pioneers and their new congregations. As the economy begins to grow, the prices of the houses will begin to escalate, and pretty soon they will become prohibitively expensive.
Please pray for these dedicated young people in the former Soviet Union. Only the power of the Holy Spirit can turn their dreams into vibrant congregations. If you would like to help purchase house churches for these new believers, please contact Global Mission.
Одиноких вижу и в метро я, их глаза уставшие от забот.